escape route for you. So move them before you start. Also, another point to watch is when you've got wire in underneath the bark of the tree, which that you'll see it because there's always a bulge in the bark if the wire is in there. It's always a good thing to get something like a spade or shovel and cut the bark off and see what you've got underneath so that you've got no obstructions. So now we're ready to cut the tree down. So what I'm going to do now is to cut a sink in here, which is a 45-degree down and along there, and then I'm going to turn the saw and put it in flat and cut it in there, and it brings like a wedge shape out. So now I've got my saw here, and by using a saw you need protective clothing. So your wellies and your chaps and your helmet and muffs to go over your ears to protect the ears from the noise. So what I'll do now is start my saw. I warmed my saw up. I'll be starting it now and cutting it. Now I've cut the sink out of this tree, I'm going to start cutting by here now. Cut about 1.5 inches above the bottom of the sink. That's 1.5 inches. And then I'm going to cut in by here, and then I'm going to leave 1 inch hinge there that directs which way the tree is going to fall. Now that we fell the tree, I'll just go down here now and show you what we meant by a hinge. This is the hinge here, as you can see, this rough bit and the bit on the trunk of the tree. The reason why we call it a hinge, that controls how it falls, where you want it to go. By this tree, we've got more of a hinge this side, and it comes narrower that side. This is the reason why we cut in there sooner and we left more of a hinge here for it to pull over this way a little bit, so there's a thicker hinge here as the tree is dropping. This tree now has come down to plan. So what we're going to do now is move on to our second tree, which is not quite so easy. It's leaning over towards the building, and also it's heavier branched, and the branches is on the side of the building. So I'm going to have to get my lookout now and come and assist me on this tree. So when we cut it, we're going to have to use some extra tools. We're going to have to use a wedge and a bar to lever it over slightly so it comes down in the same place as the last one. So now my responsibility to look around to see if there's any people around before I drop this tree, because if there's anybody about, they've got to keep at least 2 lengths of the tree away. I repeat, at least two lengths of the tree away to be safe before I cut the tree down. We're going to cut a sink now in this tree, just like the last tree we did. And then we're going to take the saw around the back and come in the back and cut the back down to the hinge. Going back to the sink now, this sink has got to be cut no more than 3 to 4 inches in, and the cut down as well, but make sure the 2 cuts don't come together. Don't overcut, because if you overcut, you weaken the hinge. Sink has to be cut at right angles to the direction of the tree is going to fall.
Well, as you can see here now, although we're showing you this tree, this is not one to attempt for the beginner. The reason we're felling this tree is because it's too near the barn and is also leaning towards the barn. So we'll be showing you the aids that we use when we have to do trees like this. He's just cutting the sink now, which we've spoken earlier about, and also he'll be leaving the hinge more on the side of the tree that Di is on now, so that it'll incline the tree round away from the building. So there, Di has just removed the sink. Being as this tree is heavily branched on the back, which you cannot see at the moment, I am standing just behind Di now, ready with what we call the aids, which are wedges. One is a plastic wedge which we start off with, and then I'll be coming in with a high lift wedge after. And we also have a felling bar, but the felling bar might not be enough for this particular tree. Now I'm putting the wedge in now, which will stop the tree coming back. Di has left enough meat on the tree to stop, so that I can put my wedges and bars in. Then he'll continue cutting as I attempt to push the tree away from the building and down where we want it to land in the field. We use the plastic wedges in the softwood because if you happen to touch it with a saw, it doesn't damage the chain or the cutting edge. Under normal circumstances, with the tree leaning a little or not so heavily branched, the bar will itself take it over. But as I said, this tree is leaning back rather heavy, so I know I'm going to have to use the high lift wedge now to push it over. But I cannot emphasize the safety enough, and do not attempt any trees that are like this yourself. Also, the plastic wedges are good for the softwoods, but not so good for the hardwood, because the hardwood is so hard it doesn't grip the plastic and they can slide out. I'm now hitting the high lift wedge in, which is definitely going to push the tree over.
She's going.
And there she goes. Down exactly where we wanted it. Shortly now then, Di is going to sned the tree. By snedding we mean take the branches off. What you should do is cut the branch high to the left first, so that you don't pinch the saw or anything like that. You have to watch out for the way the branches are sprung, and then as that one just did. Also, by cutting it far away and close, you can clear you've got a clear walkway which you're not tripping over the branches you've cut. Also here now we see the branches that have dug in the ground. If there were any cables or pipes in the ground there, those branches would have spiked them and ruined them. Never work on the lower side of a tree on a slope, as when you cut those branches off from underneath, as Di is, the tree could roll on you.
Most of the wood from the trees that we chopped down has been used either for timber or for firewood. But there was a certain amount of the pine that we couldn't use for anything else, and I didn't want to have a big bonfire. So we brought it down here, and it's going to sit here now for some years, very slowly rotting, and meanwhile forming a habitat for insects, small mammals. It's out of the way, and I think it's just doing a little bit for the environment.
Now we have shown you how to cut a couple of spruce trees down. We're moving on to a little bit different tree that's behind me now. This is an ash tree. The reason this ash tree's got to come down, it's dying and it's getting dangerous. Some ash trees you cut, you don't have to cut a sink. On this particular tree now, I will be cutting a small sink because the tree is very big, and then I'll be dropping it. On the smaller trees, you don't have to cut the sink, you drop them, and if you cut sinks in the small trees, they fly back in your face. This ash tree here now has got some undergrowth. So first of all, what we'll be doing is to clear all this undergrowth that's around the bottom of the tree, cut it and clear it out of the way so that you've got room to work to drop the big tree.
Well, here now Dai is demonstrating how to cut a rather large ash down, and he's starting to cut the sink. On a tree this size, you need a sink. But if it was a smaller ash, say up to a foot 18 inches diameter, we wouldn't cut the sink at all. We'd just run the saw down the front of the tree. Because if you cut a sink in an ash and then you cut in the back, you've already weakened the tree, and the tree can split and kick out backwards and knock your head off. So, being as this one is large, Dai is cutting a sink. Also, you saw him earlier clearing his escape route and all the rubbish out the way, which would endanger his life if he had to try and run or the tree went the wrong way. While he's cutting a sink now, Dai is also watching for any changing colour or liquid running out of the tree, which would indicate rot. If you start cutting your sink and you come across a darker sawdust, this would also indicate rot. Then you must stop and call in the professionals, because the rot of the tree is unknown internally. Therefore you can't predict, as we have earlier, which way the tree is going to go. You could see him just then, just making sure there wasn't any rot in sight. Once Dai is committed now, once he's finished the sink, he must complete any work on the tree, this tree that is, before he walks away and starts another. So in other words, once you've cut your sink and started to fell the tree, you must finish the job before getting on to any others.
See what wind they want.
See that tree give that extra roll? That could be the one that kills you if you were on the lower side of the tree or anywhere near that tree. As I've said before, they are so unpredictable, you don't know where they're going to go. So you have to be ready for everything. So safety first always.
Did you get that? We can't put it back.
A couple of weeks ago, we had 2 dangerous trees taken down elsewhere on the property. I always like to replace trees if we lose any, and this year I've decided to put a line of trees along here. It's about halfway across a fairly large field, just to make a small shelter belt for the animals. And I've already planted 5, which are a selection of maple and ash, and I'm just about to put another ash tree in.